When my dad was diagnosed with prostate cancer, all of his kids, me and my siblings, were all living outside of Ottawa. I was living in Toronto with some of my siblings, and my sister was living in California. She was a nurse there. So my mom sort of bore the brunt of taking him to his treatments, and he went through the regular treatments that you get for prostate cancer. I don't remember specifically, but over the next couple of years he continued through treatment to the point where I guess in around 1990 none of the treatments were working and the cancer was continuing to progress. So at that point my dad had a grandson in California, and so he flew out to go meet his grandson in November of 1990 and met my sister's doctor, who happened to be friends with a doctor in Toronto who was carrying out some clinical drug trials on a new drug for prostate cancer. And my dad had tried with his doctors in Ottawa to see what other types of treatment was available, and they couldn't identify anything that he would be eligible for, either in Ottawa or anywhere, in fact. And it was through the luck of this doctor in California who called the doctor in Toronto that my dad became eligible for this experimental treatment in Toronto. I always remember being in Toronto and meeting him at the airport, and he'd come out of the airplane in a wheelchair, because at that point it was the level of his mobility and they were trying to be cautious, and we'd take him to the hospital and get his treatment done, and then if he wasn't feeling too well, we'd put him up, he'd stay with one of us overnight, and if he was okay we'd have to put him back on the plane and he'd have to go back, and just the wear and tear on his body of having to do that, in addition to having to deal with the cancer itself, it was very, very sad to watch. Unfortunately, I've had the unique experience of having both my parents die of cancer, one relatively quickly with a diagnosis in February and her death in June, and my dad went for 3 years through various types of treatment. And the lessons I've learned from that is that it's so important to have the right type of treatment and care in Ottawa for patients in Ottawa, so that they don't have to travel, so that they have access to the top doctors and they're not suffering because they live in a city that might not attract those doctors otherwise.